Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Classic Comics and another live stream. Pretty light this week, not a whole lot, so this stream shouldn't be too long. But as I put in the description, so the first story I'm going to take a look at here is bring this up. So the early reviews for Joker 2 are beginning to leak out. And this is from entertainmentweekly.com. Polarized Joker Folie à Deux reviews range from brilliant musical to collective punishment. Okay, initial reactions are in after the world premiere of Joker Folie à Deux, and it's not so much a royal flush for Joaquin Phoenix's Joker and Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. Director Todd Phillips' sequel to the 2019 Oscar-winning DC Comics blockbuster debuted Wednesday night at the Venice Film Festival, where critics were split on the project, with select strongly positive reviews juxtaposed with several firm takedowns. IndieWire's David Ehrlich said that the film felt like it was, quote, bad on purpose in his headline, with the review ripping the film as an excruciatingly, perhaps even deliberately boring sequel that does everything in its power not to amuse you, and blockbuster filmmaking as a form of collective punishment. He specifically pointed out that Phillips wastes much of his cast, including the addition of Gaga as Harley. Quote, in theory, it maps on like a delightfully chaotic idea to troll audiences by introducing Lady Gaga as Joker's partner in madness, only, the, only to then relegate her to the sidelines for most of the story in favor of endless trial scenes that literally relitigate events of the previous film, Ehrlich wrote. In practice, Phillips's decision to cast a generational superstar in a role that seems designed to maximize both her supreme talents as a singer and her all-consuming screen presence as an actress, just so she can sit in the background of a courtroom whenever he's not cutting her musical numbers off at the knees. Well, it's a lot more criminal than anything Arthur Fleck ever does in this movie. Similarly, Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian said that the film, quote, spirals out of tune and is as strident, laborious, and often flat out tedious as the first film, despite being a minor improvement in his estimation for its musical touches. But he expressed that the sequel doesn't examine anything remotely plausible, sad, funny, or unexpected about the titular character, and it feels hollow as a result. BBC's Nicholas Barber touted the project as a, quote, dreary, underwhelming, unnecessary slog, while Owen Gleiberman of Variety summarized that the new narrative declaws Joker in a way, making him less interesting and altogether less threatening this time around. And that's what we're hungry to see the continuation of in Folie à Deux. Arthur, the ordinary maniac who somehow, by embracing his identity as Joker, transcends who he is. The letdown of the movie is how little it makes us feel that, Lieberman noted. There are plenty of scenes with Arthur dressed as Joker, defending himself in the courtroom, singing this or that chestnut, sometimes in fantasy numbers that might almost be taking place in his head, but there's no longer any danger to his presence. He's not trying to kill someone and he's not leading a revolution. He's just singing and on occasion dancing his way into his Joker daydream. Meanwhile, Pete Hammond praised the movie for Deadline, calling it a, quote, brilliant musical return to a world of madness and a collision of old-fashioned golden era musical fantasy and real-world violence. He also praised Gaga for being smartly low-key in her take on Harley, which he notes is drastically different from earlier performances by Margot Robbie. Still, in a review that touts the film as frustrating and an uneven sequel that, quote, doubles down on key aspects of the film's earlier divisive character study, The Hollywood Reporter's David Rooney also cited the musical flair as a saving grace for the film that he wishes it included more of. Their musical duets and solos have a vitality that the more often dour film desperately needs. Joker Folie à Deux follows Joker's return as Arthur Fleck, who evolved into the nefarious Joker in the 2019 film. Now confined in Arkham Asylum, where he meets one of his violent supporters, Harleen Quinzel. Together, the pair form a chaotic bond that leads to a path of destruction throughout Gotham City, all punctuated by elaborate, fantastical musical elements. The film's first trailer included a teaser of said musical moments, as did a new featurette for the film that included Gaga singing Phoenix, a version of Ruth Eddings' Get Happy, a song widely popularized by Judy Garland in the 1950 film Summer Stock. There's a romance to Arthur in the first film, like when he dances in the bathroom. Arthur has a music in him that was a logical leaping off point for the sequel, Phillips said in the footage, weeks after revealing that the initial idea for a Joker sequel involved putting Phoenix on a Broadway stage for a real life limited run stage show featuring song and dance numbers. That would have been interesting. I'll give him that. It's a novel idea. We started talking about music very early on. We wanted it to feel dirty in a way that people don't typically see, Phoenix observed in the clips. We had to perform live and perform the songs in ways that maybe weren't the most beautiful rendition of the songs. There was something very exciting about that. Added Gaga, quote, this music within him, it's messy, chaotic. It's expressing the complexity of love and in a way brings Arthur to life. Earlier this week, Warner Brothers also dropped a new preview for the film featuring a look at industry actor Harry Lottie as Harvey Dent, the famed DC Comics character and Gotham City District Attorney, who in the comics transforms into the villainous Two-Face. The first Joker film, which followed a struggling clown who transformed into a violent societal outcast who mounted a grim revolution in Gotham, was also divisive among reviewers, sitting at a score of 69%, with critics on review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, while its audience score is well above that at 89%. The original film went on to gross over $1 billion at the global box office and was nominated for Best Picture at the 2020 Oscars, where Phoenix won Best Actor for his portrayal of the famed comic villain. Yeah, so my feeling on it. Oh, hello, Adega. Hey, thanks for stopping by, sir. Always good to see you. So my feeling on it, I kind of had my thought was that this probably wasn't going to do well. Mainly just because of the whole nature of the musical, and also just I think the first film, for whatever reason, I think it was just kind of one of those lightning in a bottle things. It was just the right movie at the right time, and maybe the moment had kind of passed. And I just don't know if you can recapture that. And then there's the musical aspect of it, because let's face it, the main audience for the first Joker movie was primarily, I think, young males. I don't think that's a stretch. And young males generally don't like musicals. That's more of a thing for female audiences. So maybe they're gambling that that casting Lady Gaga, who does have a following, and putting her in this will be able to make up the difference. I don't know. I'm skeptical of it. But what has kind of bothered me even more, where is I had another article on this. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, here it is. Okay, so let me drop this article and move on to the other one here. Because I've got another article with some Joker reviews in it. Okay. And this is from Screen Rant. Okay, Joker 2 first social media reactions and reviews are here. Okay, critics are sharing their thoughts on Joker Folie à Deux ahead of Joaquin Phoenix's DC movie releasing in theaters next month, featuring Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. After the massive success of 2019's Joker, the Clown Prince of Crime is returning to the big screen this fall in Joker Folie à Deux. Picking up more than 2 years after the Joker movie ending, the sequel explores Arthur Fleck's life after the chaos he caused in Gotham City, while also having Harley Quinn enter the Elseworlds franchise. As Warner Brothers Discovery is only 4 weeks away from releasing Joker Folie à Deux in theaters, members of the press had a chance to see the DC sequel early at its premiere at the 81st Venice International Film Festival and are now sharing their thoughts on the film. Check out several reactions and reviews below. Let's see. Screen Rant host Joe Deckelmeyer said of the film, quote, "It wasn't what I expected, but in the best way possible," praising director Todd Phillips and writer Scott Silver's work on Joker Folie à Deux for taking a, quote, bold creative leap. Screen Rant senior movie editor Alex Harrison was, quote, "naturally more inclined to enjoy Joker Folie à Deux, but defined the sequel as something that will, quote, be poking the first movie's more toxic fans with a stick," unquote. And this is kind of the thing that is kind of giving me pause, because there have been a few reviews, I think, and a few articles saying that this film is basically one of the main targets of the satire in this movie is people who liked the first film, basically. So, basically going after the supporters of the first film. I don't know, maybe going after your own audience. You would think maybe they would have learned, but clearly they have not. Nerd Reactor writer John Wynn praised Joker Folie à Deux for how it defies all expectations, describing it as a, quote, jukebox musical with engaging performances by Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, I've read that one already. Discussing film, reviewer Ben Rolfe looked at Joker Folie à Deux as a, quote, odd, ambitious musical sequel that ends up challenging Phillips's original Oscar-winning installment. The Hollywood Reporter film critic David Rooney said that despite being over 2 hours long, Joker Folie à Deux felt narratively a little thin and at times dull. Variety critic Owen Gleiberman defined Joker Folie à Deux as an audacious concept requiring an audacious execution, which seems to be lacking for most of the film. Film writer Bill Brya added that Joker Folie à Deux is a musical that deconstructs the Joker mythos with more panache in comparison to the first Joker movie. When it comes to movie sequels in general, it has always been one of the trickiest accomplishments in Hollywood, especially if it is meant to follow a first installment that was already hitting all the cylinders with critics and general moviegoers. From the early reactions to Joker Folie à Deux, it appears there are definitely aspects of the sequel that are not quite working as well as what Phillips did with his first Joker film. Even if there are solid performances by Lady Gaga and Phoenix, it begs the question if their deliverance will help amplify the quality of the overall story. Joker Folie à Deux is very much a big experiment for the comic book movie genre, from Harley Quinn being introduced this early in the Batman universe to the musical elements that play throughout the sequel. The creative team behind Joker Folie à Deux has clearly tried to raise the stakes and be more ambitious than the 2019 film. They certainly raised the budget, that's for sure. However, perhaps this was a mixture that won't work in the long run, which is why Joker Folie à Deux has been a big project to follow over the last few years. Given that Joker Folie à Deux is still 4 weeks away from being released to the public, time will tell what other critics and general audience members will think of the sequel. It's possible that Joker Folie à Deux will be another Hollywood blockbuster that perhaps doesn't connect with critics as much, but will be more appealing to fans. Once Joker Folie à Deux arrives in October, it will be fascinating to see how the rest of the world responds to the new DC installment. Yeah, yeah, like I say, I mean, I was kind of leaning. I would not really kind of in the middle of the road about whether I wanted to see it or not. But now this stuff about how it's basically going to go after its own fans, I'm just that kind of is really turning me off. So I'm kind of on the fence about whether I'll see it or not. Now I have heard that Phillips has said that this is going to be the last one. He's not going to do like a third Joker film. He's not going to do a Joker 3. Uh, you know, we'll see if that holds or not. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So next, let me go to the next one here. Okay, and this is from Screen Rant. So where am I at here? 15. Okay, 15 minutes. Okay, so Josh Brolin reportedly offered role of Hal Jordan in DC's Green Lantern series. A new report claims Josh Brolin has been offered one of the main roles in the new DC Universe's Lantern series. After not really featuring a Green Lantern in the DCEU, James Gunn's DCU will give the members of the Green Lantern Corps a much more prominent role. There are already 3 confirmed human Green Lanterns for the DCU, with Nathan Fillion playing Guy Gardner and Superman, while Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart lead the DCU's Lantern series. Now it seems like the favorite name for Hal has been revealed. Get rid of that. According to the In Snyder, In Snyder, get it? Josh Brolin is in talks to play the Green Lantern Hal Jordan in the DCU's Lantern series. Brolin is no stranger to superhero adaptations. The actor gave life to Cable in Deadpool 2, and more importantly to Thanos, the biggest villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far. And he played Jonah Hex, too, in a DC movie, so don't forget that. If the casting pans out, Brolin would have an overarching role in the DCU's Chapter 1 and beyond as Hal Jordan. Brolin's team has not yet responded to the offer, which went out last week. Okay, so an offer's been made, but he hasn't taken this role yet, is what they're saying. Okay. Brolin was not one of the expected names to be up for Hal Jordan. Some of the fan favorite stars for the role are Glenn Powell and Chris Pratt, both of whom are over a decade younger than the Thanos star. Interestingly, Brolin being offered the role is in line with the DCU's only Green Lantern casting so far, as Nathan Fillion plays Guy Gardner in James Gunn's Superman movie. Fillion is 53, and since Guy is younger than Hal Jordan in the comics, it makes sense for Brolin at 56 to be offered the role. Based on HBO's description of the Green Lantern series, which calls Hal Jordan, quote, a Lantern legend, the character should serve as a mentor to the younger Jon Stewart in Lanterns. Brolin has shown recently that he can play that part very well. In the Dune franchise, the actor gives life to Gurney Halleck. The character is one of those responsible for guiding Timothée Chalamet's Paul Atreides in matters of combat and values. Brolin plays the role of the wise, hardened, but compassionate mentor well, which could be what the DCU is going for with Hal Jordan. Yeah, I think they're probably going for something like that, where he's going to be, they're going to be like a buddy cop team, and he's going to be kind of the wise, experienced, and sort of cynical veteran who's teaching the younger guy the ropes, that sort of thing. That seems to be kind of what they're aiming at here. Brolin's time as Thanos should be enough to show that he is a great addition to the DCU. The actor gave life to the biggest villain in the MCU, delivering a nuanced, complex performance that made Thanos one of the most impactful foes in cinema history. If Brolin brings that same level of dedication to the DCU, then Hal Jordan is in great hands. That said, there were other talented stars who looked more like Hal and could have fit Lantern's mentor role, so it remains to be seen why Brolin was chosen and if he will accept. And I would suspect also that part of the reason they cast him is because of his past with the MCU, and they're kind of hoping that'll bring people in. Kind of the same reason why they brought in James Gunn in the first place, because of his MCU work, which is very popular, and that would help bring other people and it put butts in seats, basically. Okay. Now I have seen, because again, I mean, in the comics generally, Brolin or Hal is not an older guy. Now I've seen some, because apparently some people don't like the casting of Brolin. Um, I don't love it or hate it. I mean, I like James Brolin as an actor. I just my reaction to this, it kind of is my same feeling that I had with Pedro Pascal being cast as Reed Richards. It's like he's good, but I've seen him in so much stuff. Can we please get maybe a fresh face to play this role? Instead of just like going to the same. It seems like there's like one pool of about maybe 24 or so actors, and they're all cast in these roles, these sort of big franchise tentpole movie roles, and they just go back to these people over and over again, and I don't know. I'm just a little tired of it, and I'd like to see something a little different. Adega says, makes me nervous messing with the lanterns. Um, well, I mean, the whole thing, James Gunn's whole approach is making me nervous. I kind of wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the further we go along, the more I'm kind of like, I don't know. Um, the main thing is them turning to Tom King, comic book writer Tom King, is like one of their main writers. That's just disastrous to me because that guy is the worst. But so it's not that I really don't like him or don't want him cast. I would prefer someone else, and he is quite a bit older than what Hal is generally portrayed. Now, some have pointed that out and said, basically arguing he's too old. Um, and I've seen others counter that argument, saying he was portrayed as an older guy for a long time. Not really. Now, as I recall, I mean, Hal was pretty much the same age, I mean, because most of the main heroes in DC, like Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, etc., the Atom, Hawkman, and all that, they're pretty much portrayed as, and Green Arrow's another one, they're all pretty much portrayed as being kind of around the same age. They're all kind of frozen in that kind of, 30 to 35, maybe, and actually maybe more like 30 to 32 or 32 to 35 range, right? Basically mid to early 30s. Now, as I remember, after Crisis, towards the end of the 80s, and I'm thinking this was maybe around like 88 or so, maybe 89. They did a mini series, which I believe was called Emerald Dawn, that kind of revamped his origin because there was a lot of that. Right after Crisis, John Byrne did Man of Steel, which was a mini series that sort of retold Superman's origin and sort of established his new status quo, right? And they wound up doing that with several characters. Wonder Woman did get a mini series. They just did that for her in her own book. Like the first 6 issues of her book were basically retelling her origin. But I believe, you know, uh, Hawkman got one, and also similarly, Batman Year One. It wasn't a mini series, but Batman got that in his comic, like a 4-issue storyline. So you had Batman Year One, Man of Steel. There was an Aquaman miniseries that retold his. There was Hawk World, which redid Hawkman's origin. Trying to think what else. I mean, there were some others. I'm not remembering them all now. But then eventually they did Emerald Dawn, which they got around to doing with Hal. And again, that was around 88 or so. And after they did that miniseries, they then did kind of like age him up, it seemed. Because after that miniseries came out, they started showing Hal having like gray hair at the temples, like Reed Richards does. Has always had that kind of gray on his sides of his head. They gave that to Hal, and he had that for a few years, going from, again, about 88, 89. He had that during like the death of Superman and then the reign of the Superman storyline. And then shortly after that was when he went nuts, did his big heel turn, became evil, destroyed the Central Power Battery and destroyed the Green Lantern Corps, really, and became Parallax. And then a couple of years after that, they did the Final Night storyline where he sort of redeemed himself with the sun was dying out and he sacrificed himself to reignite the sun and save Earth. But then he was dead. And after that, they started having him. At that point, Kyle Rayner was Green Lantern. And they had, I think, a couple of issues here and there where Kyle encountered Hal, but it was like a ghost. It was like Hal's ghost. And as the ghost, Hal looked, he looked young again, if I remember correctly. And I know at least in at least one of them, he looked like a young guy again. He didn't look like the older version. And then after a year or two of that, then he became the Spectre. And the Spectre, I guess, is kind of ageless. I don't know, but he didn't look old anymore. Is the point. And then around, what was it, around 2004, I think they did Rebirth and brought him back. And then he was the young Hal again. So really the only amount of time he spent as an older sort of aged up Hal was about maybe 6 years. And that was it. And the vast majority of his history, he's been pretty much contemporary, in terms of age with the other main heroes, not as this older guy. And in particular, he and John Stewart were always kind of the same age. I mean, you can do it this way. I would prefer it if they stay more consistent with, again, what the comics have done, but this could be good. The thing that bugs me about this Lantern show is that they've basically talked about it being, I think the idea was that they were going to do basically a superhero version of True Detective, where it's going to be a detective story. And okay, I guess. It really bugs the crap out of me is that they've got Batman, who is, supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and they all hardly ever have him doing detective stuff at all. And then you've got Green Lantern, and Green Lantern is supposed to be a fairly straightforward superhero, action adventure hero, again with kind of a cosmic slant to it, him fighting out in space. And what do? They decide, let's have this guy be a detective. You know, it just it's so frustrating. But yeah, I mean, if he takes the role, he'll probably be good. I mean, he's not going to be the Lantern of the comics, but I'm sure it can work. Yeah, Dega says, yeah, the lanterns need to be off world. I mean, preferably, I mean, I'm okay with them being on Earth, but again, in more of a sort of straightforward action superhero type of thing, not him like looking for clues and stuff. Again, that's not really something Green Lantern ever did. I mean, particularly back in the Silver Age, there were plenty of stories with DC heroes that would have like a slant to them. Batman is the obvious one, but there are others that would do that too. But Green Lantern, I mean, I don't know. I never really thought of him as being that way. Okay. Which one do I want to do next here? Okay, let's go ahead with this one, since I've got mostly DC stuff this week. Speaking of Batman, and this is from comicbookmovie.com. The Batman director Matt Reeves shares first official plot details for upcoming sequel. Rumors relating to the Batman director Matt Reeves' plans for his highly anticipated sequel have been doing the rounds since shortly after the movie was announced, and we finally have an official update on the plot of the Batman Part 2 straight from the filmmaker himself. And God, when did the Batman come out? That was 3 years ago, wasn't it? I'm trying to think. I think it was, yeah, it was 2021, wasn't it? Or was it, let me look that up. Was it 2021 or 2022? Oh, no, it was 2022. Okay, so we're we're a little over 2 years. So we're like maybe 2.5 years out from that movie, and they're just now talking about filming, finally about maybe filming the sequel. So we're probably looking at close to 5 years between these two movies. And you wonder why the delay. I mean, I guess if you think about it, so you had, because that movie was coming out, I think, right around the time that Zaslav was really taking control at Warner Brothers Discovery. I think, when that merger was taking place. And then it was like a few months later, later that year, that control of the DCU was handed over to James Gunn. So then you had this big changing of the guard and kind of a pivot as to what direction they were going to go. So that probably had delays. And then the following year, of course, then we get the writer's strike and then the other strike. So yeah, so I mean, I guess they have had some. I guess you can justify the delay somewhat, but it seems like they should be further along with this than they are. Okay. Okay, so Reeves shared a story outline during a new interview with SFX magazine, confirming that the movie will once again feature Batman investigating a mystery. He didn't reveal anything too significant beyond this, but his comments have ignited a lot of speculation online. And I would say also, by the way, now, of course, one of the selling points going into the Batman was, oh, he's going to be a detective and he's going to do more detective stuff. And fair enough, he did do more detective stuff. It's true. But that's only because the past Batman movies hardly had any. And honestly, if you watch the movie, it's not like he really doesn't figure all that much out himself. Like it's the Catwoman is the one who brings him the proof that it's was what Falcone or whoever it was that was behind, the murders and all that. And it's and there's a couple of different scenes where he basically is given information. And that's how he figures it out, because basically people give him like there's the scene where there's that ridiculous scene where they think, because there's they have this clue about a flying rat, right, or something like that. And of course you think a flying rat, oh, I don't know, a bat maybe, because even in the first Joker movie, the Joker refers to Batman as, he's like, I've got a flying mouse to kill. So naturally, you think Batman, okay, a bat, a flying rat, right? But then Batman spends the movie basically considering every possibility but a flying rat, because I think at one point he says a pigeon, because they're sometimes referred to as rats with wings or something like that, because they multiply so much and they're so ubiquitous in big cities. And it kind of made sense, and he thought that then that was a reference to the person, the informer who had informed against the mobs, or who, I'm trying to remember the whole plot, but basically that it referred to a stool pigeon, which, okay, I can kind of guess. But then later he figures that's not right, and so then he pivots to goes through a couple of different possibilities. At one point to a penguin, so maybe a flying rat is a rat with wings is a penguin, which makes no sense. So they catch the penguin, and then the penguin's the one who basically tells Batman and Gordon, yeah, a flying rat. You think maybe a bat? Could that be it? And Batman and Gordon are like, whoa, never thought of that. I mean, come on, man. Because, and even I had figured it out. I mean, when the audience is figuring out the big clue, like 30 minutes before the greatest detective does, it's kind of like not the best writing in the world. Okay, that's my that's my rant about the Batman. I'm going on. Let's see. He doesn't reveal anything too significant beyond this, but his comments have ignited a lot of speculation online. Quote, we've shared the script as we've been going along with DC, and they're super excited, he tells the mag. It's going to dig into the epic story about deeper corruption. It goes into places Bruce couldn't even anticipate in the first one. The seeds of where this goes are all in the first movie, and it expands in a way that will show you aspects of the character you never got to see. Batman is constantly battling these forces, but those forces can't be entirely exorcised. So the next movie delves deeper into that. Deeper corruption in Gotham City. I don't know why, but when I read that, I think of the announcer on the old Batman show. Deeper corruption in Gotham City? Sounds like the Dark Knight might be meeting the Court of Owls. Let me get rid of that. Okay. The shadowy sect was introduced in the pages of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's New 52 run as an organization of the wealthiest and most influential citizens in Gotham. The group operated in secret and remained unknown among the city's population, aside from some urban legends centered around their reputation for grisly assassinations carried out by indoctrinated agents known as Talons. There are other possibilities for the sequel's main antagonists, of course, but when it comes to certain villains the Cape Crusader may or may not be going up against, Reeves did indicate that certain fantastical characters, including the likes of Gentleman Ghost, are off the table. Quote, what it was important to me was to find a way to take these pop icons, these mythic characters that everybody knows, and translate it so Gotham feels like a place in our world, he added. We might push to the edge of fantastical, but we would never go fully into it. It's meant to feel grounded. It doesn't mean you won't see characters that people love. That's exactly what we want to do. Gentleman Ghost is probably pushed a bit too far for us to be able to find a way to do, but there is a fun way to think about how we would take characters that might push over into a bit of the fantastical and find a way to make sense of that. Co-writer Mattson Tomlin recently confirmed reports that cameras are set to begin rolling in 2025. Yeah, so you're talking if they start filming in, well, it doesn't say when in 2025 though, like early or late. Oh well. Quote, it's shooting next year. We're gearing up, and I will say that the bar just couldn't be higher, Tomlin told Screen Rant. It's the sequel to the first one, but also Matt Reeves is like no other. In the 5 years now that I've been working with him as closely as I have, I've tried to absorb as much as humanly possible from him, and I'm so grateful for the times that I got to spend with him because he is a true artist who is operating in a world where sometimes art just doesn't get to flourish, and he's trying to make something that really matters. So to be able to just be on the ride and be part of that process, it's pretty unbelievable, pretty tremendous. I'm psyched for the movie. What do you think of Reeves's update? Do you think he's referring to the Court of Owls? Let us know in the comments section down below. Yeah, I think Court of Owls is a pretty reasonable guess. And as they say, grounded characters. You know, and the Court of Owls are pretty grounded. They're basically just a bunch of rich, corrupt people. They don't have superpowers or anything, or any like super science or that sort of thing. So I think that's a pretty reasonable guess. Now, I will say from what I recall in the Batman, and I haven't seen it since it was in theaters, but if I recall, there were some references in this movie, you know, because there was like this group of people who had been mixed up with the mob, and yeah, because that was part of the big reveal in the first one was that Thomas Wayne had basically been mixed up with the mob, with Falcone and those people. And I forget the specifics of it, but basically that Thomas Wayne was corrupt. And one of the people who I think, had maybe known about this and had subsequently been eliminated so that he couldn't talk was, oh crap, I'm blanking on the name now. But it's the character. What is Hush's real name? Because it was his father. Um, what was that guy's name? Let me see here. Thomas Elliot. Yeah, that's it. So in the Batman they made a reference or a suggestion that Thomas Elliot's father had been killed by the mafia to just shut him up, which seemed to be like obviously setting up maybe having Hush come in the sequel to come after Batman as revenge for his father's murder. So my thought was maybe Hush would be involved in some way. And I suppose you could probably swing it in some way where you have Hush and the Court of Owls in it. And then also there was a point in the movie where Batman, in like the final act, there's a scene where he's fighting some guys and he injects himself with something. And, and he goes nuts and beats the crap out of him. And it seems like it was supposed to be Venom, which would seem to be setting up Bane coming somewhere down the line. And those were coming out of the movie. Those were the two things I was thinking. So maybe Court of Owls with Hush or something like that. That would kind of be my thought. Okay. Where am I at? Oh, I'm at 40 minutes already. It's going longer than I thought. Okay. So another DC story here. And I don't have many, so this might get to an hour. I'm not sure. Okay, again, this is comicbookmovie.com. Queer and Challengers director Luca Guadagnino, and I hope I'm saying it right, Luca Guadagnino, reportedly set to helm Sergeant Rock movie for DC Studios. Luca Guadagnino may not seem like the most obvious fit to helm a comic book or superhero movie, but the filmmaker is believed to be in talks with DC Studios to direct an upcoming DCU project. Jeff Snyder first mentioned that Guadagnino whose latest film Queer is screening at the Venice Film Festival, was, quote, being courted for a future DCU project in his newsletter. And Nexus Point News later weighed in, claiming to reveal the project he's in talks to direct. According to the site, Guadagnino is set to helm a Sergeant Rock movie, and his challengers and queer collaborator Justin Koritskis is on board to pin the script. The project is said to be a, quote, period piece set during World War II. We've been hearing whispers of a potential Sergeant Rock movie for quite a while, and attempts to get a film based on the character off the ground go all the way back to the late 80s when Arnold Schwarzenegger was briefly attached to play the lead. Bruce Willis was also said to be in talks to play Rock in a movie helmed by Guy Ritchie back in 2008. Yeah, I remember rumors about Bruce Willis playing Sergeant Rock back in the early 90s, I think. Producer Joel Silver revealed that his take on the property was going to be set in the future during a 2010 interview with LA Times. Quote, it takes a place a little bit in the future as a war movie. It's not going to be where it's been, it's going to be where it's going. We didn't want to do a rock, we didn't want to do a contemporary war, we wanted to do a sort of futuristic war. It's pretty strong. Chad St. John wrote the script, and we've got Francis Lawrence involved in developing it with us. It's not a go movie yet, but I'm feeling good about it. So, I mean, that seems to be talking about the Bruce Willis version. So that's the Bruce Willis movie, not this current movie that's in development. And if that's the case, I'm glad, because they don't need to be putting Sergeant Rock in the future fighting Skynet or something. That's not appropriate for his character at all. Sergeant Rock was created by Robert Kanigher and Joe Kubert, debuting in the pages of Our Army at War number 83 in 1959. Rock was a member of Easy Company, a unit that fought in the European theater during World War II and consisted of a disparate group of individuals who managed to participate in every major action in the European War. What do you make of this rumor? Any interest in a Sergeant Rock movie? And do you think Guadagnino would be a good pick to direct? Please let us know in the comments section. Um, I mean, I would like to see a Sergeant Rock movie if it's done right. And I would hope that it would be good, but I don't know. It's difficult to trust them because I just can't trust Hollywood to do anything to do justice to most comic book characters. They just screw them up. Okay, what next here? And as for Guadagnino, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know his stuff, so I'm not sure if he'd be good or not. Again, I'm kind of skeptical. To me, it's more the writing. What I would like to see, and I'm sure this isn't what they're going to do, though, is if Sergeant Rock were done right, it would be something like Saving Private Ryan or like Band of Brothers, something like that. Very grounded, pretty realistic, with no fantastic elements, really. I mean, I might think you might have them make references maybe to superheroes about how the other superheroes are off doing something, but Rock and his people never really interact with them because Sergeant Rock's stories, particularly like most of his stories from when he debuted up through the 80s, because the 80s was when they pretty much stopped kind of regularly publishing him, because he was pretty much appearing regularly in some book or another at DC for decades. But the thing was, after Crisis, because his people, they were, he was world weary, war weary, and they were like the guys in Private Ryan. They were wanted to fight the war and win it, but mainly because they just wanted to win the war, because once the war was over, they could go home. Not because they really wanted to be there, and because they wanted to be there, and uh, it just. I don't know what else to do. Okay. Let me go to our next one here. Okay. Bring this one up. So this one is a Marvel movie or a Marvel story, excuse me. Okay, and this is from gamerrant.com. Marvel's Nova series will draw inspiration from two major sci-fi franchises. Marvel's upcoming project Nova has been officially greenlit and is set to begin production in the coming years. It's now been revealed that the project will take inspiration from two major sci fi franchises. While Nova is currently in development, it will be some time before the series finally premieres. Although details about the series' premise are scarce, a key figure in the production has shared an intriguing fact about what to expect: its inspiration. In a recent chat with Phase Zero's Brandon Davis while promoting Agatha All Along, Marvel's head of streaming television and animation, Brad Winderbaum, reassured fans that Nova is in development. Although he could not reveal too much about the series' premise, he did mention that the show will draw inspiration from Star Trek, particularly its recent iterations. So great. As well as incorporate elements from Battlestar Galactica. Rumors about the Nova project have been circulating for some time, but it's only been recently confirmed that Marvel is indeed bringing this lesser known part of the franchise to the screen. Brad Winderbaum recently disclosed that while the series is indeed in development, a release date remains uncertain due to Marvel Studios' busy schedule. This delay is partly because Marvel often develops more projects than it ultimately produces, which has raised concerns about Nova's timeline. The studio tends to prioritize their most high profile projects before shifting focus to smaller ones, and Nova is no exception. Uh, okay. I mean, you prioritize Agatha all along over Nova, really? Despite these challenges, Winterbaum reassured fans that the series is definitely moving forward. He highlighted that Marvel is committed to ensuring the series meets their high standards before its release. Yeah, sure. That's a laugh. For Nova, Marvel is looking to explore more cosmic focused stories, especially those that are intended to be released on Disney Plus. Winterbaum also shared intriguing details about the series' influences. He revealed that Nova will draw inspiration from two significant sci fi franchises, Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. According to Winterbaum, the series will incorporate elements from both of these iconic shows and is expected to be, quote, an amazing ensemble piece, unquote. The choice of influences is particularly noteworthy given Star Trek's recent resurgence in popularity and the involvement of Terry Matalas, who has worked on Star Trek and is currently involved with Vision Quest. I didn't realize he was working on that. This connection suggests that the inspiration from this franchise may be more deeply ingrained into Nova than initially anticipated. While the news about Nova is certainly exciting, is it? Details about the project remain sparse. Kevin Feige, who confirmed the positive news about the series' production, had previously noted that the series might not see the light of day for another 3 or 4 years. Originally, Nova was planned for an earlier introduction, especially given the character's connections to the Guardians of the Galaxy. However, the decision was made to delay the character's debut as it was felt that Nova was, quote, too big of a character to be introduced in a movie. Now, Nova is finally getting the spotlight it deserves with its own standalone series. Although this will require patience, the extended development time may be well worth it if it means delivering a more refined and compelling narrative. Yeah. Okay, so obviously, it's cool that they're doing Nova, but as always with the MCU, it's like, what are they going to do? Is this going to be any good? And I'm pretty much at the point where I just assume it's going to be crap until proven otherwise. Now, if you don't know, so Nova, at least the original Nova series, as has often been noted, it's actually kind of like a takeoff on Green Lantern, because you have this person on Earth, a young man named Richard Rider, who is like a teenager in the first movie, but he gets granted powers by a dying alien who was a member of this sort of interstellar police force or law enforcement force, right? So very similar to Green Lantern. And they say it's an ensemble piece, so I'm guessing this means I'm wondering, is this going to be the Richard Rider character? Because there have been multiple Novas, and are they going to do Richard Rider or are they going to do another character? And of course, with Marvel, you always got to wonder: are they going to gender flip him and make him a woman, or make him some other, ethnicity? And also, if they do it, are they going to have him be Earthbound? Because he was largely Earthbound in his early adventures before it eventually took him into space. I would imagine they're going to make it more of a space-based thing. I would bet, but I don't know. As far as the inspirations of, oh, look, we're drawing inspiration from Star Trek, and we're drawing inspiration from Battlestar Galactica. Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but aside from Star Wars, Star Trek is pretty much the most high profile and most well-known sci-fi property out there. So to say we're drawing inspiration from Star Trek is hardly like groundbreaking or exciting. Battlestar Galactica, yeah, maybe. I don't know. And I assume they mean the more recent version. But even then, they say like it's going to draw inspiration, particularly from the more recent iterations of Star Trek. So Kurtzman Trek, basically. And again, I see nothing about that to get excited about. It does seem like they're taking it in a more, quote, dark, edgy direction, for whatever that's worth. I mean, honestly, if for Nova, if you wanted to get me intrigued or interest me, I'd say they would say we're drawing inspiration from The Lensman or from, I don't know, Alien Legion, or something like that. Some property that's a little more obscure. That's what would intrigue me. But it doesn't mean it'll be bad, but it doesn't really excite me much that there. I mean, that doesn't really tell me anything. It's like we're gonna base it off of Star Trek. That doesn't really tell me much because so many shows and so many sci-fi shows riff off of Star Trek in one degree or another anyway, even if they're not really even intending to, because Star Trek is so tremendously influential. Again, it's pretty much everything in sci-fi in the last 45, 50 years has been riffing off of Star Trek and or Star Wars to some degree anyway. Okay. What do I want to call it a night there? Yeah, you know what? We're at 53 minutes. I'll just go ahead and call it there. Why not? Okay. So I do want to thank everyone who tuned in to listen during the stream and those who will tune in during a rewatch. Please do like this stream while you're listening, and please do sub to the channel and hit the bell for notifications, and maybe check out some of my other videos while I'm here. Now, I probably will not be doing a Trek Talk this coming Tuesday. I'm going to be pretty busy, and I'll be with my National Guard unit next weekend, so no stream on Sunday, and probably not doing Trek Talk the week after that either. So I'll probably return as far as doing streams probably sometime after this weekend. Uh, but it may even be what I guess 2 weeks from now, so 2 Sundays from now probably. Then I'll come back. But again, thanks to those who listened, and I hope you all have a good evening, and I'll see you next time.